Here we are again. This one today, I wanted to talk about the fourth part of the ego. I've already just gone through you are not what you have, you are not what you do, you are not what others think of you. And I wanted to go through you are not separate from other people. And I think for me, it started, I suppose you could go right back to the early days of school uh, where you would be set into different classes. You would perhaps be streamed in certain subjects based on the ability in tests. You would be picked for the team. You wouldn't be picked for the team. You would be with a particular group. You would be with the chess group, for example, or the Dungeons and Dragons group, or the sporty group. Um, and I suppose, or the music group, whatever it was, there were divisions set up, and I think, to be fair, there are divisions in society generally, but through schooling, you get an initial taste of this idea of separation. And that's just basically the environment that you're in. Some schools are more inclusive, and some are a little bit, shall we say, too large to be inclusive. So you go through that system, and I suppose then in your and in the cultural sense of the word, when you are out of school, you could belong to certain groups in the area. So you could be part of a dance group, you could be part of a football club, rugby team, hockey team, and whatever. And that's absolutely fine. I'm not deriding any of that in any way. What I'm trying to highlight here is the divisions start fairly early. And I think when you get into the realms of adulthood, um, the divisions become more and more diverse, and there seems to be a little bit more um, of just a fanatical sense, and you can call that on the football terraces where people will hurt each other in the name of a said group that they belong to. Now, I suppose if you look at history, particularly, um, it's funny that you generally are told who to hate. Now, if you go back, say, not so long ago, you talk through the American Civil War, and they were told to hate the French, and then you'll go through to we were told then, oh well, the French are okay, so the Americans now were told to hate the English, and then you go a little bit further forward, and we're told to hate the Germans, and then we'll go a little bit further forward, and then we're then told to hate the Japanese. Um, and then we get all the way, we just keep going forward through history, and we're being told who we should hate. Then we're told to hate the Russians, then we're told to hate um, the Iraqis, then we're told to hate ISIS, and so on and so on, and so it goes. Now, I don't know anybody, and I didn't know anybody in Russia at that time. As Wayne Dyer put it, some commie grandmother in Converse trainers that I hated, and I think this being told who you should hate or which side of the fence that you should come down on is just further evidence of this divisive nature of the ego. So, this is what I wanted to explore today, because I think what that then sets you up for is when those groups fall away, then it kind of leaves you, as the ego does in many of these points that I'm making, it leaves you quite vulnerable. If you look at, say, for example, if you are what you have, then when you don't, you aren't. It's that kind of idea. If you are what you do, then when you don't, you aren't. It's and within this video here, I'm talking about if these groups particularly lose their credibility, or they just stop functioning, then you, as a part of that group, tend to stop functioning, and it leaves you quite vulnerable. So I think recognizing that, we are not separate from others is important. You could talk also, and I know it's quite a provocative subject, but you could talk about religion, organized religion particularly. One could suggest, one could argue that there are wars around the world that are being conducted in the name of certain religions, and that's gone throughout history. Um, so I think for me, although I'm not religious, I do have an internal religion, if you like, and that is to say that we are all one. Now, this oneness, it doesn't fit with the ego. This point of being separate, and sort of what I'm sort of talking about here is, if you look far enough from something, for example, the Earth is a round planet. There are no sides. You can't take sides on a round planet. And if we stand back far enough, then we all are actually one group, one race, if you like. That race is humanity. And I think that's where we miss a point. And the more segregated we become, the more problems arrive. And I think also with organized religion, if you have a deity that is punishing, if you don't live up to their standard or their dogma, then I see that as something that that makes me shy away from those kind of religions, because it further separates us. I am here and you are here, and I don't believe that at all. I think, as I said, we are all one race. And it really upsets me sometimes when you see the media taking us down this path of you have to fit into a certain group or a certain box or a certain cultural or social division. And that's a shame, really, because I think there is more to people than that. Than I spoke about on the last video about being labelled. Once you label me, you negate me. So I think it's worth thinking about. And when we talk about separation, particularly on a local level, I think we've got to look at things differently. The strap line that runs through a lot of what I'm thinking about at the moment is, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And you could look on a local level, and you could look at people who, for example, are homeless. In Dr. David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force, he talks about how we view a tramp on the side of the road, based on how we are calibrating at that time. It's a scientific book, but it basically says that if you are seeing the world in a hostile way, then you will view the tramp in a hostile way. If you view it as a place where we are all part of the big jigsaw, then you will view that tramp in a completely different way. And I think what I'm asking here is for us to look differently at that situation, albeit the homeless, be it people who have learning difficulties, people of different colour, culture. I think, rather than being told what to do and how to interact with these people, I think we should be, and I say these people in a respectful way, rather than being told what to do there and how to communicate with them, then come from what I would call a heart space. Recognize yourself in them, and this is where I think, there's a wonderful saying, and it's to do from I think it's an American Indian saying. When we talk about being one group of people on a round planet, they talk about the idea that no tree has branches so foolish as to fight amongst themselves. And I think Wayne Dyer put it perfectly, that we are all branches on a tree called humanity. Now, if this doesn't sit very well with you, that's absolutely fine. But it's kind of a different way of viewing things, that's all. It's a different standpoint. And I think my education, particularly in school, which is so much different to the education I'm going through right now, the education I was brought up on was this idea of separation, and you are not separate from anyone else, really, to be honest. We are all pretty much the same. So I think, we need to go out and have a look at that. People are people at the end of the day, and they're doing the best they can given the tools that they have. And if we can put an arm around someone's shoulder and help them along, then I think we're probably on the right path. So once again, have a great day. I'm sure you will. And thank you if you have been watching these videos, thank you for having a look and listening to my rambling and share, and that's what, as I said, I keep saying, this is what this media is all about. So go off and have a think about that one, and we'll be back next with 2 more parts of the ego, and other videos that I'm already thinking about is going to be touching on subjects that I think are all quite close to our hearts when we really think about them, and that's what this media is all about. So have a great day anyway.